Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. We begin in Washington, where Trump's Board of Peace met for the first time. Big pledges and bigger ambitions. But Palestinians aren't at the table, and the money raised is a fraction of what Gaza actually needs. Moving forward, tensions are rising in West Asia, where Trump has given Iran 10 to 15 days to clinch a nuclear deal. But with US warships moving into position and Tehran warning that American bases are legitimate targets if attacked, the window between diplomacy and war has never felt narrower. In India, the Shahpur Kandi Dam is weeks away from completion, and with the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance after Pahalgam terror attack, are we finally ready to stop the Ravi River's water from flowing into Pakistan? This remains a question. India is also hosting the world's biggest AI summit, positioning itself as the global AI superpower. But while billions pour in and world leaders gather, the country still has no dedicated AI law, leaving courts scrambling to apply a 26-year-old act to some of the most complex technology on the planet. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays, and the stories that matter. Coming up in this edition of Namaste World. US President Donald Trump just convened the first meeting of his Board of Peace in Washington, D.C. And if you thought this was just about Gaza, think again. 9 nations pledged $7 billion for Gaza reconstruction. 5 countries committed troops for a stabilization force led by a US general with an Indonesian deputy. The US itself pledged $10 billion, though President Donald Trump notably didn't specify what that money actually is for. Indonesia is offering up to 8,000 troops. Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania are also sending forces. Egypt and Jordan will train a new 12,000-strong police force. But here's where the number gets uncomfortable. $7 billion sounds impressive until you realize that Gaza actually needs an estimated $70 billion to rebuild after devastating 2 years of war. We are talking about a fraction of what's actually required. And the board's composition? Deeply problematic. Israeli representatives sit at the table. Palestinians do not. Hamas spokesperson Hazim Qasim says any international force must monitor the ceasefire and prevent Israeli aggression. Notice he didn't commit to disarming. Hard to blame them when Israel continues daily attacks despite the so-called ceasefire. Nearly 50 countries attended. 27 are full members, including Pakistan. Interestingly enough, India observer status only, represented by its charge d'affaires in Washington, D.C. New Delhi is still reviewing whether full membership serves its interest. Trump's ambition have ballooned since he first floated the idea of Board of Peace in Davos. He now wants the board to tackle conflict worldwide, not just in Gaza. He even declared it will look over the United Nations and make sure it runs properly. A rival to United Nations, in other words. But Palestinians watching from the rubbles of Gaza City aren't buying it. They have seen this before. Grand conferences, reconstruction pledges that get delayed or disappear. Peace process that become exercise in crisis management rather than actual solutions. The Board of Peace, Trump's bold new architecture for global conflict resolution, or another well-international body destined to join the long list of initiatives that promise much and deliver little. The gap between the pledge and the need tell you everything you need to know. The clock is ticking. President Donald Trump has given Iran 10 to 15 days to reach a nuclear deal or face, in his words, really bad things. But here's the context that makes those words land differently. This isn't just diplomatic posturing. The United States has been quietly, methodically moving aircraft carriers, warships, and fighter jets into the region, a military buildup that, according to a senior American official, won't even be complete until mid-March. Trump is setting a deadline while still assembling the guns. Iran isn't backing down either. In a letter to the United Nations Secretary General, Tehran made its position clear. It won't start a war, but if attacked, all US bases and assets in the region become legitimate targets. That's a threat with real geography behind it. American forces are scattered across West Asia, from the Gulf to the Red Sea. And Iran isn't standing alone. As US pressure mounted, Tehran doubled down, conducting joint naval drills with not one but 2 major powers, Russia and China. In the Gulf of Oman and the northern Indian Ocean region, Iranian, Russians and Chinese naval forces ran exercise together, practicing ship liberation, anti-piracy operations, aerial reconnaissance and offensive formations. Iran deployed destroyers, missile-launching warships, helicopters and special forces. Russia's corvette Stotsky participated in maneuvers and docked at Iran's Bandar Abbas port. The message from this trilateral show of force was deliberate and unmistakable. The two sides did meet this week. Iranian and American negotiators agreed on what Tehran called guiding principles. But Washington says they remain far apart on the core issues: Iran's uranium enrichment, its ballistic missiles, its regional proxies. Iran calls limit on its missile program a red line. The US wants all of it on the table. And the irony? Trump issued this ultimatum at the launch of his own board of peace. The gap between that name and this moment tells you everything about where West Asia stands today, with Iran drilling alongside China, Russia on one side and American carriers moving into position on the other side. The world is watching, and the window of 10 to 15 days is getting narrower. India is turning off the tap and Pakistan is bracing for the consequences. The Shahpur Kandi Dam on the Ravi River is weeks away from completion. Once operational, water that has flowed freely into Pakistan for decades will completely stop. With the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance after Pahalgam terror attack, India is now moving fast. Here's a story by Jyoti Shukla.
Water is power, and right now India is using it. For decades, a river ran through the subcontinent and quietly, steadily, its water crossed the border into Pakistan. Not because India wanted it to, simply because there was nowhere else for it to go. That is about to change. The Shahpur Kandi Dam, sitting on the border of Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, is weeks away from completion. Once it becomes operational, the surplus water from the Ravi River, water that has been flowing freely into Pakistan for years, stops right there at the dam. India keeps it, Pakistan doesn't get it. Simple as that. The project itself is not new. It was first conceived in 1979. Indira Gandhi laid its foundation stone in 1982. Then it sat, frozen for decades, caught in a dispute between the governments of Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir. In 2008, it was declared a national project, and yet it moved slowly, until now. So what changed? On April 23, 2025, one day after 26 civilians were killed in the Pahalgam terror attack, India placed the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. The treaty that had governed water sharing between the two nations for over 6 decades was effectively suspended, and with that, the dam project shifted into high gear. The numbers tell the story. The dam stands 55 meters high. The project costs over 3,300 crore rupees. Once operational, it will irrigate nearly 37,000 hectares of drought-affected land across Punjab, Kathua and Samba, regions that have waited a long time for this water. Javed Ahmed Rana, Jammu and Kashmir's Minister for Jal Shakti, said the project is now in its final stretch.
देखिए बड़ा ही मैं कहूँगा कि पुराना ये प्रोजेक्ट था और कई बार बना और कई बार इसका एग्रीमेंट टूटा. अब इंशाल्लाह ये इसको हमारी सरकार जो है वो कंप्लीट करने जा रही है इस बड़े प्रोजेक्ट को और मुझे लगता है कि आने वाले चंद महीनों में इंशाल्लाह इसको फुली तौर पे लोगों के इस्तेमाल के लिए हम कर दें.
And when asked about the treaty and what it means going forward, the minister was direct.
जो रावी नदी का जो पानी है, जो कि उस पर अगर हम इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी की भी बात करें, इस नदी पर हमारा ही अधिकार है, लेकिन फिर भी इसका कुछ पानी जो है पाकिस्तान की तरफ चला जाता था, अनयूटिलाइज्ड वाटर था जिसका हम प्रयोग नहीं कर पाते थे. कितना महत्वपूर्ण समझते हैं आप इसे?
देखिए हमें क्या ज़रूरत है उसके मुताबिक हम इसको यूटिलाइज करेंगे. जो इंडस वाटर ट्रीटी है वो सस्पेंड है इस वक्त और उसका लाभ उठाना चाहिए
तो हमारे किसानों को तो इसको काफी लाभ होगा, खासतौर पर सांबा कंडी इलाकों में, सांबा कठुआ में।
इसमें वाटर टेबल भी बढ़ेगा और एग्रीकल्चर फैसिलिटीज के लिए भी ये कायम आएगा। कुल मिला के बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट।
Here is the larger picture. Pakistan depends on the Indus River system for nearly 80 to 90% of its agriculture. Its water storage capacity covers barely 1 month of flow. India, meanwhile, has accelerated work on multiple hydroelectric projects across the Indus basin: Sawalkot, Ratle, Bursar, Pakaldul, and more. The Ravi was always India's river under the treaty. India just wasn't using it fully. Now it is. And with summer approaching, Pakistan faces a serious water reckoning, one that has been decades in the making and is now finally at its door. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
India is hosting the world's biggest AI summit. 70,000 attendees, billions in investment, and a bold pitch to be a global AI superpower. But here's the paradox at the heart of it all. India is trying to govern cutting-edge artificial intelligence with a 26-year-old law written before smartphones even existed. Debangna Datta reports.
India is hosting the world's biggest AI summit. 70,000 people, leaders from dozens of nations, billions in investment announcements. India positioning itself as a global AI superpower. But here's the uncomfortable truth. India is trying to govern artificial intelligence with a 26-year-old law that was written before smartphones existed. The Information Technology Act of 2000 contains zero provisions for AI, machine learning, or machine-based decision-making. Yet this is the law that courts are being forced to apply to AI disputes in 2026. Cyber expert Pawan Duggal doesn't mince words. India has no dedicated AI law, no national cybersecurity framework for AI systems, and no clear answers on who's liable when AI causes harm. Think about it. If an AI system autonomously makes a decision that harms someone and you can't clearly identify the developer, deployer, or user as responsible, the victim has no legal recourse. None. While India debates voluntary guidelines, 6 jurisdictions already have dedicated AI laws. The EU's Comprehensive AI Act, China's Generative AI regulations, South Korea, Japan, Hungary, and even El Salvador. India just passed new rules requiring AI-generated content to be labeled. That's progress, but it's not enough. It doesn't address liability, bias, transparency, or security. The foundational questions an AI law must answer. The stakes: national security. When AI powers banking, healthcare, and defense systems without proper security standards, we are not just talking regulatory gaps. We are talking vulnerabilities. India's AI ambition is real. The legal infrastructure to match that ambition? Overdue. With Debangna Datta, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here's a wholesome story to end on. A baby monkey abandoned on a hot July day, a young keeper who refused to give up, and an IKEA-stuffed orangutan that became an unlikely mother. Meet Punch, the Japanese macaw who found his footing and along the way captured the world's heart.